This is For My Sons, a space where we equip men to lead themselves, their families, and their communities with strength and wisdom. I'm your host, Papa O, a father, a husband, a son, and a student of life. Here, we dive into all the topics that shape the development of men. Lessons, stories, and principles you can use to strengthen your family and impact your community. If you're passionate about becoming a better man, building a better family, and leaving a better world, you're in the right place. Let's jump into today's conversation. Today's topic of conversation is the importance of communication. And the proverb of the day comes out from Yoruba land, and it translates as, "A rider never finishes speaking without someone noticing the footprint of his horse." Communication is the bridge between mind and world. Your words leave lasting footprints, just like a horse leaves tracks after moving, and every conversation is either built or broken down on communication. And my recommendation is to choose build. Let's break down what communication actually is. And by its definition, communication is the exchange of information through symbols, signs, or behavior. It includes what you say, how you say it, how you listen, and even what you don't say. So communication isn't just what we say, it's how we connect with others. Now let's look into the two key types of communication that you need to understand and to master. Now let's look into the two key types of communication. The first is intrapersonal communication. I'll say that again, intrapersonal communication. And those are the conversations you have with yourself. Those are the conversations you have that help shape your self-image, your confidence, your expectations, and your mindset. So if we're talking about intra, again, it's how you look into the mirror, what you see, what the self-talk that you have, right? It is most likely what has an effect, or most definitely what has an effect on your confidence. As I've already said, your self-image, how you perceive yourself internally. And it does have a direct effect on how you talk to other people as well. So it's not just a case of whatever you say to yourself, you say something completely different to somebody else. No, more often than not, how you speak to yourself is just a reflection as to how you speak to other people. The second key type of communication is interpersonal communication. And that's how you interact with others. And that includes speaking, writing, body language, and even silence. So again, there's intrapersonal communication and there's interpersonal communication. So now you know what the two key types of communication are. Let's look into the common communication challenges that someone might come across. Firstly, you have failing to explain yourself. Now, an example of that is when you give your manager some half-done update without context, and your manager's just looking at you going, "So, where is this conversation going?" That absolutely causes confusion, which of course you don't need from your manager, because that will most certainly come back and cause you issues later on. Secondly, poor listening. And what I mean by poor listening is hearing someone to reply, but not actually looking to understand them. So a perfect example of that is if you're having a debate, if you're having an argument with somebody, instead of you actually trying to absorb what they're saying, you're just getting your points ready, not really listening to what they're saying, but you're getting your points ready to have some sort of rebuttal ready, right? Just to be like, no, I said this. But calm down for a start. Secondly, poor listening is always going to aggravate another person. And it's really bad for communication. A third is interrupting others. Everybody, and I mean everybody, hates being interrupted. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what age you are. Everybody hates being interrupted. So interrupting other people is just not on the cards. Poor communication, however you want to look at it. Do you remember the last time that you were interrupted. How did you feel? If you felt anything short of livid, you're a better person than I am, because whenever I'm interrupted and I'm mid-flow or mid-sentence, something like that, I am irate. Especially when it's somebody has asked me a question. Oh, Papa, what do you think about this? And I start, rebuttaling, and then halfway through I get cut off. Like, but why did you ask me for my answer in the first place? Right? Interrupting others, poor communication. Another, and this is more to do with written communication, is sloppy writing. So something like a rushed email that's full of typos that leads to misunderstandings at work. Right? That happens from time to time because you think, okay, if I need to respond back to this email in a certain period of time, but you don't actually give it any due diligence, you don't double check anything. Again, that's poor communication because all you've just done is create confusion on the other side. Communication is meant to connect, not to confuse. Another is speaking unclearly or in a confusing manner. So a good example of this is if you are presenting something and you start rambling in your presentation or you start mumbling during your presentation, that definitely will, again, cause confusion and not connection, which is not what you're looking for. And finally, you have using the wrong attitude, tone, or method. And a good example of this is if you are having a disagreement, let's say with your partner, and you send a text message instead of just giving them a call. Now, I've done this myself, and I have most certainly regretted it. It's actually one of the main reasons as to why I value the phone a lot more now in my older years than in my younger years where I used to text all the time. Because when you're texting somebody, yes, you have the words there. Yes, you might be able to convey across the context to somebody, but more likely than not, you're not going to be able to get the delivery off the same way. I'm sure there are some friends that you have where if you say one thing to one of them and you say exactly the same thing to another person who's not necessarily in that same friend circle, it could be interpreted in a different manner. So when it comes to having the wrong method, which I think is actually pretty important to note out of the three that I just spoke about there, in terms of wrong attitude or tone, it is always best to choose the right method of communication when you're speaking to someone. And that would very much depend on the relationship that you have with that person. If, of course, they're a pen pal, well, they're a pen pal. Clearly, there's no harm in in sending them a letter or an email. But if it is someone that you're either in an intimate relationship with, or it's your mum, it's your dad, it's your sibling, it might be best to give them a call if you have that kind of relationship with them. So we've seen where communication can break down. Now let's look into why communication is so essential for men. Number one, you can't lead, love, or build without clear communication. Now, remember I just told you, communication is meant to connect, not to confuse. And love is a form of connection. However, look at yes as a choice, we can go into that on another podcast episode. But love is meant to be a form of connection. So if you can't communicate well enough, there's no hope for love for you, right? And I know that sounds really harsh to say, but everybody wants to be understood. And in order to be understood, you need to be able to communicate or convey your feelings across to somebody. That is, again, still a form of connection. You're still having to communicate. So you need to be able to communicate properly. True leaders are able to communicate properly, right? They're able to get their message across. So if you look at what a typical leader looks like, as in one that people aspire to, you'll find out that their communication skills are really good. Well, at least to the public anyway. So people like Martin Luther King Jr., Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela. These are just a few people who were great communicators and great leaders at the same time as well. Now, of course, you can have great communicators who aren't leaders, but you can't have great leaders who aren't great communicators as well. And of course, from that, building as well. You can't build without good communication skills, right? If we take it even as far as, an easy example is the construction industry, right? If you have a project manager and they're not able to communicate effectively across to all the laborers, to the contractors, to the different managers, different teams that are going to be working on a construction site, everything's going to fall apart. Oh, that's a lie. Things aren't even going to start because the communication is bad. So that's why it is important to be able to communicate. Number 2, strong teams, families, and businesses depend on your communication as a man. Now, a good example of this, I love team sports, right? It could be rugby, it could be football, it could be hockey, it could be basketball, whatever team sport that resonates with you. If you don't communicate properly within that team, one or two things are going to happen. You're either going to get absolutely ostracized, which isn't going to help because it's a team sport, right? So typically in a team, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And number 2, you're more than likely going to lose because you're not communicating properly. Hey, pass me the ball. And if somebody doesn't pass you the ball, what do you do? But if you didn't communicate, hey, look, pass me the ball if you see so-and-so making a move on the other team, right? Something as simple as that. And I'm using, of course, I've gone to football. Look, I'm from the UK. Football is an easy reference to go to. But again, in your respective countries and your respective places, team sports require communication. And as such, the best teams are able to communicate really well. And now when we're talking about teams, that's from an outside perspective. If we're talking more personal, we're talking about families, right? A husband, wife with their children, if everyone's not able to communicate properly, if you as a man are not able to convey across what you want your family to, or what direction you want your family to go in, or you're not even able to communicate across to your wife properly, it's going to cause weakness within the bonds that you have. Because how are they going to know what vision you have, what goals you're striving for? Are you striving for the same goals? And that's from a macro level. We're talking from an every day-to-day level, right? If it's something as simple as, okay, did you take out the rubbish? Or could you please remind me about something that's happening in the next couple of days? And you're not able to communicate that across properly, it's going to cause problems when things happen. Or when things don't happen, as the case may be. Number 3, good communication repairs relationships. Sometimes all people want is that they want to feel heard. They want to feel like they are valued. Every human being wants to be valued. So if you as a man are able to communicate very well, there's no relationship that you can't mend, because you'll be speaking from the heart. The person that you're speaking to will also see and feel that you're speaking from the heart. For example, there might be a person that you fell out with for whatever reason. It could have been in the last couple of weeks, could have been a couple of years ago. The best option, if you want to repair the relationship, if you felt it was irreparable, obviously there are certain things that for example, if you make a threat on their life or something like that, you're not going to repair that relationship. Sorry, it's cooked, right? But we're just talking about if you fell out of favor with one another. A simple heartfelt apology, conveying across, your sentiments, could very well repair the relationship. Maybe might not be as good as before. That obviously would take a bit of nurturing. Rome wasn't built in a day. So if there is a relationship you want to repair, one apology is not going to do it. There's going to need to be some subsequent action. But it is a start. And that's what good communication could do. At the very least, it can lay the groundwork for you to repair relationships. Another good example of this would be if you've had a falling out with a parent and you haven't really spoken to each other properly, or the relationship just seems a bit strained. All it takes is good communication to start repairing the relationship. Now, of course, that is if the other party wants to repair the relationship as well. It's not just a case of everything has to be on you. No, a relationship of any sort takes more than one party. Typically 2 people, but it takes more than one party. So if they are willing and they are receptive to wanting to mend the relationship, then of course, good communication would definitely set the groundwork for that. And number 4, this is one that I talked about a bit earlier on. Self-talk shapes outer talk. And what that is meaning to say is that the way that you talk to yourself would typically be a reflection as to how you talk to other people. And it's important that you're able to communicate well with yourself first before speaking to other people. For example, if you think that you're no good, then your opinion of everybody else will also reflect that. Well, if I think of myself this way, as being no good, then there can't be any way that anybody else is good. What are they looking for? What's their slant? What's their angle? Could be someone that's doing something like the kindness of their heart. I mean, it could be the fact that they're no good, but you're not going to find that out if you think that everybody's no good all the time. Right? Your self-talk shapes your outer talk. A more optimistic example is if you have a positive outlook of yourself, then what will happen is that when you speak to other people, there is a higher chance that they will also reflect that optimism back to you in some form or another. It could be them helping or giving you a helping hand at something. It could be somebody just cracking jokes or, smiling as they're walking past you, right? Good vibes, good vibes. That is a more positive example. Again, that's come from your self-talk and how that shapes your outer talk. Now, I will say on that last point, that is not to be a case of just because you think highly of yourself that everybody's going to suddenly just be absolutely amazing. There's a higher chance, is what I said. Be very clear about that. Higher chance, right? Cool. So to wrap up those 4 points, number 1, you can't lead, love, or build without clear communication. Number 2, strong teams, families, and businesses depend on your strong communication as a man. Number 3, good communication repairs relationships. And number 4, self-talk shapes outer talk. Now, an example to encompass all of this is a father who clearly communicates boundaries and expectations with love and consistency raises more confident children. And the reason why that's important to mention is because I'm a massive advocate for active fathers and active fatherhood as a whole. Now, note what I'm talking about here. I'm talking in general, okay? I'm sure that there are always exceptions to the rule, but I'm talking in general. And the reason why I'm talking in general is because that's what makes up for most of us on planet Earth, right? Exceptions are just that. They are exceptions. But generally speaking, if there is a lack of an active father presence, or even if the father is there and they're not really putting in those boundaries or those expectations in place and they're doing that consistently and with love, you see it in the children, right? You see the discord in the children. And this is not me blaming the children. This is me blaming the parents. Okay? Like how are you having a wild 4-year-old? Huh? Doesn't make any sense. Like in the Nigerian community, you know what they call that? No home training. At all. That's never something you want to hear. So this is a section of the podcast that I address specifically to black men. And the reason why is, number one, I'm black. Number two, my sons are black. And number three, I'm taking it from my own experiences. Now, of course, there are nuances. I'm sure there is something similar like this in every culture globally. But again, I'm just speaking from my own experience from this one. So when it comes to communication, coming from an African background, communication is a bit weird. It's a bit one-sided. It's a lot more authoritative when you have, either parents parents, not just parents, anybody of the older generation speaking to anybody of the younger generation. It's always a kind of top-down kind of conversation, or top-down type of style, as opposed to it being a two-way street. And that, of course, creates gaps. That creates miscommunication. And something that I learned was that the way that the older generations have developed, they're only modifying from what they know, right? A lot of people hold resentment saying, oh, I didn't like the way that I was spoken to as a child, or I didn't like the way I'm spoken to as an adult. I'm my own man, I'm my own person. And you are right. You absolutely are. However, it is better for you to understand what you don't want so you can implement what you do want. So having communication is a two-way street. Now, if you want a bit of a clarification, what I mean by authoritative is basically the well-known phrase of my way or the highway, right? And from the background that I'm from, not necessarily this is me. This is not me, right? This is just other people that I knew, right? If there was any form of forced attempt for a two-way communication, especially if we're talking from parent to child, I mean, what that child would experience is basically, and if you don't know what that is, I will break that down for you. That's catching hands, right? Nobody ever likes catching hands. Never. So it, of course, caused miscommunication, caused a gap between parent and child, or sometimes it was random elder and child. There's a well-known phrase of it takes a village to raise a child, and I completely agree. The issue is that phrase was taken to its extremities, where a random elder, because they're in the same generation as your parent, would have the same authorities as your parent. And of course, what that would lead to is that would lead to, again, an entire generation talking down to a child, and then causing miscommunications, causing mistrust, causing resentment, really, because then you're like, oh, I don't want to go to this auntie's house. Don't want to be anywhere near her. Every single time we go around, it's a problem, right? And that is something that I definitely experienced as a child. And I guess moving forward, the best way to go about that is as you as your generation, for your children now, it could be your child, it could be your niece, it could be your nephew, right? Yes, you do have a level of authority. However, it should be to connect and not to oppress. Now, our old generations may not have known that, or may not have been able to articulate that. Again, I'm not denigrating what the old generations have done, right? What is in the past is in the past. That's for one. For two, you can't change it. So you might as well just learn from it and make sure that doesn't repeat itself again. So to close out today's conversation, I want to leave you with a clear call to action plan. And that is to become the CEO of your communication. And it involves 3 steps. Number 1, communicate clearly. Be simple and direct with your communication. Number 2, communicate early, and that is to speak before small issues become big issues. And number 3, communicate often. Regular conversations always prevent misunderstandings. If you want to dig even deeper into communication, I recommend 2 great books. John Maxwell's 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication and Dale Carnegie's Listen. And if you want to hear my full notes and key takeaways from these books, join us over at the Locals community. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today on For My Sons. I hope today's message challenged you, encouraged you, or gave you something worth passing down. If you found value in this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new letter, a new lesson, or a new legacy moment. Until next time, be a communication CEO. Communicate clearly, communicate early, and communicate often. This is Papa Ro, and I am